Ninja Gaiden, Ninja Action. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sean.
And that's it. That's it for today. You would think it's a very important episode. I would think, at least. So, Sean, do you think this is an important episode?
It seems like it's a pretty important episode, but real quick, Mike, we just had a discussion about the pronunciation of the title of this game before we recorded, and you still said it weird.
I feel like the only way to say this is in a way that, like, no one's ever heard it before, so this way you can't argue, with the Gaiden or Gaiden fans. You just say Gaiden.
Gaiden.
You know? It's like French. It's Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden.
Ooh, I like that. Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah, I love it.
I like that. I think that's cool. Or we could just refer to it as Ninja Action, which is actually not quite on the back of the box, but it is two words on the back of the box, and that was the best I could pull from. It's the first two words on the back of the box. So you get what you get sometimes when it comes to the opening titles of a nostalgia episode.
Yeah, and the legacy of this game kind of precedes it.
It does, but I don't know about you, but when I think of this whole franchise, I imagine an incredibly difficult franchise that has honestly made me shy away from it over the last 30 years of my life.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Because of all of the horror stories I've heard about this game, it was sort of like a Ghosts and Goblins thing, but more people, I feel like, we're playing Ninja Gaiden more, or at least like games in this series more than Ghosts and Goblins more recently. So I had some friends that played the modern versions, but even then I was like, no, thank you. I'd prefer to play a game that is a little less hard, even though I never really played.
Yeah, in a way, the reputation of the reboot series on the Xbox, that to me was like before Dark Souls. That was Dark Souls. Like, you just had this reputation of it being incredibly hard, and I was like, well, why would I buy a game like that? And turns out like those can be fun. But yeah, this whole series is brand new to me, including this NES game. I had never touched it before. How about you?
I hadn't played this. I hadn't even played the Xbox version. All I know of the Xbox version is that it had laughably over-the-top cutscenes, and characterizations. But yeah, this is my first exposure to Ninja Gaiden in general.
And when we were playing Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest a while back, that was another game that had a reputation to it. And I think we all came to the conclusion of, like, isn't this weird that, like, this and Zelda 2 are coming out around the same time and they have, like, similar gameplay styles? Of course, Castlevania 2, it beat it here in the States, but it actually came out long after in Japan. So it was technically copying Zelda 2. Here, I was very surprised to see how much of Ninja Gaiden is really just Castlevania 1.
I didn't actually put that together, but I kind of get what you're saying there. I feel like the movement in this game is really what sets it apart. There's definitely some parts of Castlevania 1 in terms of its controls and, like, the speed of the movement and some of the sticky shit with that I think feels a little bit better in this game. But in terms of, like, the general layout and like the general structure, I do agree. Yeah, I could see a lot of Castlevania in this. It's
pretty crazy. Like, you look at the UI and it's almost like 1-to-1 the same. There's bats in this game.
Bats.
There's these little guys who are, like, hunched, and then they all of a sudden they just, like, spring out into action and attack you. It reminds me of those same, like, characters that go up against you in the Frankenstein level of Castlevania. I just think it's just insane how many parallels there are, and I think most of what you're going to hear me say in this episode are improvements I would also apply to Castlevania. But it's no surprise Castlevania is my favorite NES game so far. So I think, like, Ninja Gaiden copying the formula might not hurt it. I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't know if I'm thinking of the right game series. What I was expecting from this game was one hit KO. Is that Shinobi? Or is that like a Ninja Gaiden thing?
No, that's not a Ninja Gaiden thing. So I don't know if that's a Shinobi thing. I never played Shinobi. That's Sega's Ninja series. But I'm surprised, the one hit thing, and I remember we talked about that in a previous episode too. That would to me, that would explain why people think this game is so difficult.
That's sort of what made me think of why I never wanted to play the freaking new ones, is because I thought one hit, you're dead. But once again, we're sort of experiencing these games differently than their legacy would suggest in previous episodes.
And so I'm not really sure where you want to start when you talk about Ninja Gaiden here, because you get right into the gameplay and everything that has to offer. But I think that before all of that, there's also just a presentation element to the game that lets you know. And I think we talked about this in a previous episode too, of sometimes you play a game and you know that it's going to be a good time, especially on these earlier games, because right away, based on the way that the character feels or the way that the game is drawn out, you can tell, I'm not going to really like this. Something about the very start of this game and the way it handled itself, immediately let me know, I'm probably going to enjoy this. Did you feel that?
Yeah, I would say that the where I want to start is the presentation, because when I read the manual for this, I was very enthused to read that they have what's it called, Tecmo Theater or something. Is it Tecmo?
I forget. Yes, it is Tecmo, but I forget what they
they called it Tecmo Theater.
They called it. They actually copyrighted that term.
Yeah, and it's just their word for cutscenes, and I really appreciate these cutscenes. They're I think they feel a little bit better than even Golgo 13, which so far is sort of the I find the best cutscenes so far, especially better than Rambo. And it actually seems to tell a coherent story. I don't know how much it's sort of related to the gameplay. It seems like the story is sort of happening in a different world than the gameplay, but it's really great art. The music's fine. I really like the idea of a guy in full ninja gear just sitting in an office in the CIA. Lots of great stuff here. Great animation from where there actually is animation.
It's over 20 minutes of cinematic cutscenes in an NES game, which sounds crazy, but also you can skip all of this easily. You don't have to watch these scenes, which is also a nice breath of fresh air. That's crazy. You can just hit the start button and move on to the next level, and it's no big deal. But the acts, there's 6 acts in the game. They actually feel like 30-minute episodes of an anime, right?
Yeah, they got that feel to them, especially because their length sort of shifts as the game goes on. I feel like Act 1 is 1 level long, and there's sort of more stuff going on in the later ones where there's more meat to the story. I really enjoyed these. It was a really good reward for completing a level.
Yeah, it was unexpected when it first happened after the completion of the first level. I was like, whoa, this is happening. We're actually gonna get some story and stuff.
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary, and like you said, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's happening in the same world, except for that really cool scene. I think it's in Act 4 or 3, where you get to the end of the mountain and all of a sudden it cuts to a cutscene. That that felt cool. That felt cinematic.
I agree. Is that the one that's sort of the wide shot of finally discovering this giant mountain in the middle of the Amazon?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That they could have just seen from the helicopter, but whatever.
And I guess I didn't really expect like that kind of world in Ninja Gaiden. I think I expected like not even that time period, right? Like, did you expect Ryu, who is the ninja, like, did you expect him to exist along the same time as like the CIA in America? Like,
no, I had no idea that this game had anything to do with the West. I thought it was sort of going to take place in old-timey Japan.
Well, allegedly, according to the Tecmo developers, they actually made the game because, in their own words, ninjas were having a renaissance in North America. Like, I don't know if they are specifically calling out the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which are also becoming incredibly popular.
That's some great market research. Just
you know,
it's just the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, there was probably a bunch of ninja blockbuster movies too, right? Like, I gotta think that I can't think of any off the top of my head, but even things like Karate Kid have to be helping like the idea of ninjas.
You know what? You're probably right.
I don't know. I just feel like ninjas, even early 90s, like ninjas is like a big thing and it's not exclusive to turtles.
It's not. No, I can see that. I think when you think back to the culture of the 80s, I think there's a lot of ninja themed stuff. So you're right.
But the whole game just has like a, you know, since we're still on presentation here, it does just have like an odd mishmash of enemies and vibes going on. I mean, like, football players kind of attack you, it looks like, right? Like, are those guys wearing helmets? Like, am I crazy here?
They look like football players. I can't tell what their artwork was in the manual, though.
And then there's boxers. There's just guys who just want to box you. It's like, who is this army?
Did I see a priest that was throwing, like, crucifixes at you? Or is that me just, I don't know.
Well, it technically, I don't know why you jumped to priest, because I'm pretty sure that's like a ghoul. But
well, it's a
like,
ghoul
if you look
priest.
at the face, yeah, it's a ghoul priest. Which are normal in that area of America.
Yeah.
And there's just something, I think there's just something funny about that, but it didn't bother me at all because, like you said, like, you know, it's like an anime. It's kind of silly. The story's all over the place too. It's like, you've killed your father's been killed. You've been captured by the CIA. You don't know who this mysterious woman is. Your father hasn't been killed. Turns out he's been turned into the big bad boss.
I didn't know that.
You didn't get to stage 6.
I would just like to say that this game is very hard, and I make no apologies for the fact that I did not make it to stage 6.
All right, so before we like break down the gameplay elements, let's talk about that, because you're saying that the game is very hard. I completely agree with you, but it happens in a weird way, right? The game isn't actually hard, and it is very enjoyable to be Ryu and hop onto the walls and hang onto the ledges and attack the enemies and get the cool power-ups. Like, that's all fun, and I don't think any of the enemies are unfair. I think there's just a point in this game where they should have said, you know, we really need to reevaluate if the enemies should just spawn in constantly.
That is the main issue with the gameplay in this game is, and we've damned games for this that have lesser qualities elsewhere. It makes some sections almost impossible unless you play the game in a much more conservative way, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. And it's a little bit more strategic than just like holding down going to the right. But it's a little unintuitive. I did end up getting better at this game as I played, like I would hope most people would, but there were still a lot of places that I just that like respawn, it just would soft lock me in some ways.
Yeah, there needed to be a cap on number of enemies, and I know there are people who have beaten this game who are going to disagree there, but I think, you know, the fun part of beating any video game, not even just NES games, isn't how hard they are, it's how good it feels to beat those games. And I don't know about you, Sean, but like, if I could have beaten this game, I absolutely would have. I would have went for it. Like, I was having a great time with it. It just It gets to a point on Act 5 and definitely Act 6 where this thing wants you to, like, you know, I couldn't even imagine how I would land on the next ledge while the enemies are all still there and there's a bird trying to get me and I have tremendous knockback a
Yeah.
thing that we complained a lot about in Castlevania, which again is here. Other games have knockback too, but I think since we're talking about it here in Castlevania, we might as well talk about it for Ninja Gaiden, Gaiden, whatever you want to say.
Gaiden.
Yeah, we've got to talk about it because the knockback decision feels like something that is just a relic of like, well, I can't imagine the developers. Let me phrase it another way. I can't imagine anybody saying the knockback is going to help the player. It's only designed there to hurt you.
I think the game needs knockback. I think most games that have this sort of design like does need knockback, or else things get a little easier and the like balance gets thrown off in the other direction. I just think that you need a longer period of invincibility. We're getting into nitty-gritty now, but I think you need a longer period of invincibility after getting hit and getting knocked back and hopefully not falling into a pit, so that you can, if you need to, just run past that enemy on that platform, and just like lick your wounds and just be thankful that you didn't lose a life. I think that's a pretty good compromise in terms of all the issues or all those problems that we can get into just by getting knocked back into gullies every time.
Okay, well, here's the issue with knockback is like, yes, I totally agree with you that there has to be some kind of knockback. Otherwise, it's like, what's the consequence? If you have enough health, like, just run through most things, Like, I get that. The issue is that the later stages are just,
platform after platform. Yeah.
Pitfall heaven, Like, yeah, there's just, like, guaranteed that if you're in the middle of a jump, you're jumping from one platform to another, and if you get hit by anything, you're not going to be blessed with getting hit back into the other platform. You're just going to get into the pit and die anyway. So
yeah,
I argue that, again, it's just a cruel developer thing here, where either the knockback needed to be removed or the enemy design needed to be more like thought out, because there are just situations in this game, especially later on, where I just felt like, even if I had like, the Shoryuken to throw that to kill the enemies that were on the following platform, as soon as I make a jump or something, like a bird just swoops out of nowhere,
yeah.
or an enemy from the other platform spawns. Yeah,
there's traps laid for you that they're real gotcha moments that I don't quite appreciate. So no, I agree. Yeah, the knockback, maybe it just should stun lock. I don't know. It's hard to come up with a solution, because I don't like saying like this needs to be removed and this needs to be removed. I think it just needs to be like, there's got to be an answer to these. But obviously, this game has a pretty good is very good in the memory of a lot of people. So it wasn't the killing blow for the popularity of the series.
Sure. And so rewind for a second. Forget that you're not, forget that you're on Act 5 or whatever. Go all the way back to Act 1. You're starting up the game and everything like that. The core gameplay loop of being Ryu and, you don't have any, like, ranged weapon other than some power-ups, so you're really just dealing damage with your sword and everything. How do you feel as, and I'm not going to try even say that last name. It's like Hayabusa or something.
Hayabusa, I think.
Hayabusa, yeah. It's like, how do you feel as Ryu in the game, and did they do the right amount of balancing with making like a character that could easily take down your average enemy, but also like feel good to play as?
So you're asking, feel like he feels good to play as, but he can also do enough damage?
Well, do you agree with that? Like, is there a balance there, or is Ryu just kind of like, on a 1-to-1 enemy level, like he poses no challenge? So kind of the game needed to add everything back in, like it does later on in the game.
I see what you mean. I think that that the difficulty definitely comes from the amount of enemies, bosses notwithstanding, and just how dense the field can get with them. So I don't think that but I don't think that the game would be too easy if there were less of them, because enough of the game is also like mastering the platform mechanics. And I think that the character is designed in such a way that he does feel good to control when you are just navigating the levels. And also the fact that his standard attack is so short range that you do have to get uncomfortably close to some in order to actually defeat an enemy. So I think that I think that he feels pretty good to control. Aside from when you try and change the direction you're facing when you're jumping, that's one of the things that I hated the most about his control scheme.
Right. And so you mentioned there's two parts to this game. There's there's the combat element of everything, but then there's also, you're a ninja and you've got to navigate these platforms and jump over these pitfalls. So a lot of the game is jumping, climbing on let's call them ledges, but it's really just walls, right? Like you're just hanging onto walls. You're like Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Walls and just platforms in general. Did the game did you almost feel like this is a platformer more than an action game, or is it still more of an action game?
I think just because of the balance of challenge is definitely heavily in favor of like combat. So I would say that this is more of an action game. But I guess sort of paradoxically, most of your deaths will come from falling off the ledge. But since those are all due to the enemies, I'm going to call it an action game.
Right. There's something about the platforming in the game too that, I don't know, it doesn't feel as nice as it could. Like you mentioned the jumping, right? Which is definitely an issue with the like doing a backwards jump or instead of a forward jump, or like depending on which direction you're facing and stuff. But even the wall climb, right? Like I'm not saying he should have been Spider-Man and had the ability to wall climb, but if I'm able to suspend my disbelief and think that he's just holding on to the wall, I have no reason to think that he's not able to like scale it too, right? I
think that part of the enjoyment of like sort of doing the wall climbing, of jumping back and forth, or in some senses just jumping and grabbing onto the ledge you're already on a little bit higher. I think that the fact that that's an active process and not just holding the up button is still like enjoyable and adds some amount of challenge that isn't just going to kill you by throwing you off of into a pitfall. So I like that, at least.
What about those weird moments though, where there is no other wall to jump to, and you kind of need to jump over something from the wall you're currently on? I'll just use the boss in stage 1 as an example. There is a weird strategy that I don't know if this is brought up in the manual or not. I don't know if this is like a thing that was intended by the developers, but you can sort of inch up by jumping.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yes. And I hear that, but I'm saying like they could have done that better too, right? Like I feel like that was just done on accident. Like you weren't supposed to be able to jump off and hop back up a little higher because that feels so bad. And honestly, sometimes I just wind up being further down. Like I wind up like, did I make any progress on this?
Yeah, I don't think it's intentional. I mean, well, what do we know? But it does seem like it was definitely something that they noticed and just decided to leave in, because anytime that you're supposed to do that, there is a wall opposite you that you're supposed to be able to jump off of, or sort of like bounce off of. So yeah, it doesn't feel great when you end up just sort of shimmying up by jumping back and forth, but I think that it does add a little bit of skill, even though it seems like it's not intentional. So I vote to keep it.
It's an advanced strat. I got you.
Yeah,
that's for players who dare.
Who dare.
And there's no knockback when you're on a ledge or on a wall or something. It's just like if a bird hits you while you're hanging onto the wall, you just flash of damage, but you don't get any knockback.
I guess that's a small mercy, yeah.
But I don't think it was, again, like I don't think we needed the knockback anywhere. If you don't need it when you're, if the rules don't apply in certain areas, they shouldn't apply most places. I don't know.
I wouldn't make that kind of absolute.
Maybe there shouldn't have been any horizontal knockback. Maybe it should have been like a pop you in the air vertically.
Okay, I can live with that.
Although, yeah, it still gets confusing. What do I know? I don't make video games. I don't know where you want to go from here, because I think when we're talking about the game, right? You talk about the platforming, you talk about the difficulty, but how do you wrap up like just the moment to moment action of the game? Like how do you talk about that? Because I thought that part of the game was the most fun. Like actually just when you were able to get into flow and kill enemies and keep progressing and just, making progress in a stage. Specifically, even those first 4 acts, even when birds are introduced, which don't get me wrong, I mean, birds might as well be the final boss of the game. But like, there still is a flow at certain points that just feels like a very tight platformer with solid combat and a wide variety of enemies, and the power-ups are really cool. How do you capture
this?
that? Right, yeah. How do you quantify that? How do you put value on that?
I think a lot of it is also just we were talking about presentation in terms of cutscenes and all that stuff before, but I think that a lot of what makes the game moment to moment feel good is the fact that the sounds and the sights in the actual level are impressive as well. Like when you're in the jungle, like when you first get dropped into the jungle, like this is some really cool sprite work, and like the backgrounds look amazing, and like just the fact that his run animation is so cool. Like he doesn't actually move. The top portion of his body, he's like Naruto running, I guess. Like the top portion of his body isn't moving, but his legs are moving super fast. Like that all sort of like, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like all of these things add up to just a really great feeling game, which is why I feel like we both had a lot more patience for a lot of frustrating deaths throughout the entire game.
I think that's a good way of summing that up, is that you reward games that are good to you by putting time into them. And it's less of a problem in games today, just because games today are, one, they're much larger in team sizes and in play testing and everything like that. So you won't really run into problems where like, there's too many enemies at this particular situation. Like they would have probably play tested that to death. But when you get stuck in a game that you're enjoying, you'll take some time and make the commitment to say like, all right, well, can I overcome it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in in Kung Fu Heroes, the game that we just played, there was very little for me incentive wise to be, like, oh, okay, I'll just keep trying to beat this level, where I'm not having a good time with it. Something about Ninja Gaiden here that I really enjoyed was just going back and every time, like, this is a fundamental thing of the NES, right? There's no saving. There's no, like, once you power off, you have to start over again. I enjoyed every time I started this game up, and even though I started back up at the beginning. Like, it just feels good to play through it, and I just kind of accept where I die. I don't get upset that my lives are over and that I didn't beat the game, which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. I don't hate that. I wouldn't just start right back up and go back to level 1, but I'd come back to it.
Yeah, I think that's like sort of where it's sort of the philosophy of a lot of roguelikes is just because the game itself feels good and it's not overly long. Like this game, while it's going to take you a while to beat, like we didn't beat this game, the game itself isn't all that long. So it's not like you're going to have to wait too long to get to a point where you might make some more progress that you weren't able to get to before. So I think that that makes you like less frustrated to have to start all over again. I mean, it's still frustrating to have to start all over again. If you if you're really deep into a specific stage and you use your continue to start at like 4-1, like there's still a little bit of of that frustration, but I think that because like levels aren't overly long, that plays to its advantage.
Yeah, and you know, like when you're at a friend's house and they just have Super Mario Brothers and you've played it a million times and you're like, oh, let's just pop that bad boy in and play, you know, until we die, right?
Yeah.
Like 1-1. I've played level 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers countless times, but I'm not gonna like refuse it the next time it comes up. If I'm at like a Comic-Con or something and there's like a TV that has it up, like if the controller's free, I'm gonna grab it there too. I kind of feel like that's my Ninja Gaiden now too, is like if I see that game and it's just has the title screen up, I'm kind of inclined to press start, because at least while the going is good and while my mediocre playing seems great, you know, when those moments happen, the actual game that they've designed here is awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just, you know, when you get to Act 5-2, all of a sudden the programmers have failed us, and we realize that they didn't want anyone to ever beat this game.
So
do you remember 5-2?
I think I kept dying at I think it was the boss of 4.
Okay. Well, then you were saved from the actual final boss, which is just the pitfall to your death. Because in 5-2, the programmers designed a impossible jump, in my opinion. And I know it's possible, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying for the average player, and let's be honest, some of you listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just not possible here. You have to jump down to a lower ledge. Okay? Sounds fine, right? Except for the lower ledge has a giant wall above it. And so you can't, no matter how you jump, you will either jump and land on that wall. Okay. So you'll just like land on that wall and have to jump back to the previous platform, or you'll jump and fall to your death. There's no like perfect jump and fall that gets you in that sweet spot of that other platform.
So how do you get across?
You have to jump, and this is just me, you know, I'm sure there's better strategies out there. I even know there's a strategy for like just using that cheese wall jump to keep climbing up until you clip over the level.
Interesting.
But, you know, I wasn't that good at that. So what I had to do was you jump, land on the side of the platform that you were currently on, because that's like a wall, you know, that's a wall too.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, because that was hard enough to do, so if you've managed to do that without losing too many lives, then you have to hope that you will successfully jump in between that small little tunnel that the platform is on. And did I mention that there is a bird that is also trying to you know, give you some serious knockback so that you can't complete the jump?
Well, let's hope that when the bird hits you, you're on a wall instead of on the ground, you know, so that you don't get that knockback.
Yeah. So I think, you know, if the multiple enemies that just continuously spawn in Act 6, you know, didn't bother you, 5-2 for me was the one that really killed me.
Damn. Yeah, I can't imagine it being... you know what? It was definitely the boss that got me, so I guess I can handle a little bit more platforming difficulty, but I'm sort of at my level with this game. Like, I don't know if I'm actually good enough to get any further, but I'm still gonna play this game, so we'll see. I'll update you at the best of 89.
So you're talking boss fights here, and you know, I'm not trying to insult you here by any means, because you know, the boss fights do ramp up in difficulty, but they're really good boss fights, and they have pretty easy tells as long as you're like willing to wait. And that's the weird part, right? Is for these big boss fights, I would have expected more action. Now maybe there's something poetic about a ninja who doesn't, you know, like use brute force to take down enemies bigger than him. Like, you know, he strikes only when necessary. But you know, like, let's just break down that first boss, because it's just such an easy one, right? Like,
yeah, the first one.
He walks from side to side, never like turns randomly, just always all the way to the left and all the way to the right. And he has like a pattern of when he will swing, and he will always take 2 swings. I don't know. Something about that, especially in 1989, when we don't see that too often on these NES games. It's a very simple boss fight, but it communicates a lot to the player, and it lets you know too, is like, you know, hey, you'll beat this guy, just take your time, man. Like, you don't have to go out there and try to swing your blade like 7 times while he's gonna, you know, beat the crap out of you. Just give him 2 hits and dodge his 2 hits, then give him 2 hits. I really like that, and I think a lot of the bosses came down to that. I don't remember the exact boss fight of Act 4. Can you talk to me about it?
Well, before I get into that, I will just say that I think that the stage 1 boss included, the boss's sort of like hitbox of trying to jump over them is pretty big, and I think that's sort of what gave me problems even early on. Was like, even with him, like he walks to a point where you have to jump over him, and every time I freaking tried to jump over this guy, I was taking damage because I just couldn't jump high enough, even if I was on the wall. So I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, because they totally want you. They're basically forcing your hand to jump onto the walls to get like the highest wall jump.
Yeah.
There is no way you're just jumping over that guy from the ground.
Exactly. So I was even taking damage when I was doing it the supposedly correct way. But the boss for Act 4 is like 2 like demon baby dogs or something. That, like, I think they're supposed to be statues, and they're on pedestals, and they jump back and forth, and there's like some other stuff flying around.
I remember. Sorry, I'm going to tell you how to cheese this in a second, but keep going.
Yeah, and I was using, like, I had like one of the more powerful power-ups, and I feel like even then, like, it was a crapshoot of when this was actually doing damage. I don't know if there's like a specific way to do damage, or if like you have to hit both of them at the same time. But it just seemed like I wasn't really making any progress with the standard way to attack these guys. So please tell me the cheese.
So you know that there's those 2 pedestals, right?
Yes.
And you know, maybe this didn't happen in your game, but it happened in mine. And once I figured it out on my own, I was like, you know, God bless this tactic. Like, I'm gonna stick with it. Just be patient again, and it'll all ride out. If you go under the pedestals, the way that they jump, they will always land above those pedestals, in my personal opinion. I never saw them go under them. So
those
what
are the
I would
safe
do,
spots.
Those are the safe spots, and then you come out and attack as necessary. Now, I will say that I also noticed that occasionally they will lunge at your current position. So you do have to be prepared for that as well, and move around. You can't just camp, but you can alternate between the 2 pedestals, and for me, that was enough to take care of them.
Huh, okay. Well, at least that's a new strategy. We're doing this the old-fashioned way.
Right, a strategy I found out on accident, which I'm sure is like, you know, people do know that one, but I thought like that was a cool gamer moment for me, you know, to be like, I could take down these guys.
Yeah, well,
without looking at a guide.
I appreciate the help, brother.
Oh, it doesn't matter, because when you get to Act 6, all of a sudden, all that stuff I was talking about with the boss fights being fair and having tells and stuff, it's all out the window. Like, forget about it.
Well, I was watching some videos, and I saw like the second to last boss is like he has projectiles that will always follow you, and there's no way to shake them off, and you're guaranteed to take this damage. So I am aware of how bad they can be, but please tell me your experience.
So there was something about the masked devil, who turns out to be your father. Sorry if that's a spoiler alert.
Real big spoiler.
But you can save your father, if we're going to just get further into spoiler territory. You don't fight the masked devil. There is a orb on the wall that is what you're really trying to attack to break free his mind from the masked devil.
Is this like an alternate, like, can you like do one or the other and the game goes differently?
I would love that, but I'm absolutely positive that you cannot damage
I see.
the masked devil. I feel like I tried to hit the masked devil just to see if it was doing anything to the enemy health bar on the UI, and I don't think it did anything. That would have been an easier fight, though, because the masked devil takes up the entirety of the ground. Like, you basically can't be on the ground if you're on the same side as him, so you basically always have to be on the walls. and then the orb somehow like summons fireballs that are just always around you. And that was my endpoint. I'm sorry. I know I should have probably looked up a strategy or something. Maybe there's a way to cheese it, but it was just so frustrating to see after all of the other enemies on screen and taking my time and just constantly being killed throughout Act 6 to then get to the boss rush. Remember, it's 3 boss fights at the end. To get to the boss rush and then just see what to me with my own eyes looked impossible. I wasn't interested in even looking it up and seeing how to do it. I was like, that's enough Ninja Gaiden.
Well, I'm sure someday you'll return to the well and try and finish it up.
Well, I'm sure there are people who played this game back in 1989 who wound up beating it in 2019, 30 years later, you know? Like, maybe my time is just...
like 2049, 2059.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see why not. You know what's funny, though? They take the time in the boss rush at the end. They take the time to restore your health when you get to the final, to the first boss, right?
Okay.
So that's nice. But then if you die at any one of the particular boss rush parts, you go back to the beginning of Act 6.
Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. I get that at least I know that there was a lot of games that it was like when you die, the game's over, start at 1-1, and then it was sort of this sea change when the first game that we reviewed over here actually had, if you die, you just go back to the beginning of the stage. Even if you've run out of lives. And we were so amazed by that. It's like, oh, this is finally like some mercy for the player. But I think with a game that has a boss rush, I think that there's still that need to give them a little bit more of a hand. Maybe a little bit of like a health increase between bosses.
Well, would you believe that the developers had the nerve to say that, like, that was an accident, and then when they noticed it upon playtesting, which means that they did playtesting for this game, keep that in mind. They said that when they noticed it, they were like, oh, that's pretty cool, let's leave it.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Wow. Japanese people, you know, they just do not care about your feelings. You know, think about it. It's true, though. Like, how many North American games got, like, an easy mode added to them? Like, it's so funny how these games are tough, but, you know, they were designed to be like, well, we can't allow somebody to beat this in one day.
Yeah, that would be a waste of money.
So, obviously, the second boss in the boss rush is that big bad guy. How do you want to say his name? Wakio?
Oh, yeah, I would say that it's a hard J.
Okay.
Jamiroquai?
Jamiroquai.
I'm going to go Jamiroquai.
Jamiroquai. Okay, that's weird. But so he's the second boss, and like you said, he's got the fireballs that just follow you all around the stage. Not nice or anything like that. But would you believe that the big bad is actually like an enemy from Contra? Like, do you see this thing? Yeah, like, it's not from Contra, but like the way that it looks, it's supposed to be that demon sculpture, but it has like an alien like identity to it, and it looks like, again, another xenomorph inspired thing.
Yeah, the whole like the whole interior design of the final level sort of goes that direction of like this kind of xenomorphish kind of design.
Right. So it just gave me the Contra vibes. Another great game, but you know, I just thought that was like, it was just strange, right? Like, they always have these games always have to one up themselves. Like, the masked devil is a cool enough reveal that like you have to fight your father, right? Then they're like, no, actually, psych, you actually do have to fight the big bad boss who's been behind everything from the beginning. And then it's like, actually, no, it was the demon sculpture, which is actually an ancient alien. You know, it's like, get the heck out of here. You know? One time they're going to make the final boss Mario. You know, it's going to be like, actually, he was behind everything.
Well, that's an idea. Don't just give that away for free.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
All right, that's the boss fights. You know, while we're talking about like weird quirks though in the game, I think the weirdest thing I encountered, and again, I'm sure that they knew that this happened and didn't care to fix it, is that if you're supposed to climb down something, right? Like, let's say you're going from one part of the stage to the next, and you're supposed to climb down a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
If you just jump into that pit instead, which allegedly leads
die.
to, you die. However, even if you're on the ladder and come off as you're like right near the edge of the screen,
I've done
still
this.
die.
Yeah, that's something else. I think they just need like a special descriptor, like however you program this goddamn game. Like you can fall down those. Like it'll be a quick little speed running strat, you know. Just let us fall down those pits.
Yeah, wild, you know, that happened, but also like not that big of a deal. So I don't want anyone to think like, you know, that like destroyed my experience of playing the game. I just thought it was, again, another funny thing that happened while I was playing this game, because let's be honest, this game has enough randomness in terms of enemies and the way they spawn, and like you could, you know, it seems like sometimes when you kill those birds, even though you're on the same screen, you haven't moved an inch. As soon as you kill the bird, it just respawns in the same exact spot. Am I wrong?
No, you're completely correct. That's one of the things that drives me crazy about this game.
It's like there's just all these quirks of like, guys, if you just fix our long list of complaints, you'd have the perfect game.
That's how it
Seriously.
goes.
All right, we didn't talk about the power-ups, which we keep saying are cool. Sean, what makes them so cool?
Well, because they're projectiles and you can finally hit enemies at a distance, but I think what makes them feel more powerful is because they are so limited in their use, and you only get to use them, like, you get, like, spirit energy or something, and that's how it gauges how many shurikens you can throw, or fire, like, showers you can throw. So because they're so finite, they feel a lot more powerful. So there's the shurikens, there's the super shuriken that sort of like acts as a boomerang, and that one's interesting because you can extend that and make it kill multiple enemies just by like avoiding it, and it'll sort of seesaw back and forth and destroy whatever it touches. There's the fire shower thing, which is just goes up in like an upper 45-degree angle.
Bothered me, the angle.
Yeah,
The
I don't
angle
like that. I hope it's more powerful, like on bosses or something.
Like, the actual power up is cool in the idea of like, you know, just like, you know, boom, fire attack. Like I you know, sure, I'm down with that. Like that's funny.
Yeah.
But the angle of it proved to be very useless.
Yeah, it was only for if you were lower than your enemy, so I guess they nerfed it for some reason. And then there's like the invincibility thing. I don't know of any others, or maybe there was.
The jump and slash one.
Oh yeah, jump and slash, which I thought was like separate from the rest of the power-ups. I thought it was like, this is like a power-up that you get to keep, but then I would try it on an enemy and then die. So
yeah, that would have been nice just to have that be an ability, but I don't think, like, you know, you could do it with or without, because you can attack enemies in the air still, just not as stylish.
Yes.
The jump and slash lets you do like a flip in the air with your sword out, so this way you just basically kill anything that you're
which would solve a lot of our problems with
connecting.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally. It's just that, you know, how often do you have that thing?
That's true.
And also, you know what's interesting? The jump and slash, because that becomes your you know, your attack when you're up in the air, you have to spend the 5 spirit points to use it. So eventually you'll just run out of spirit points, and you just won't have that, and you'll have this useless power up. But you don't have to spend the 5 points. There actually is a command that they put in, so this way you can do the normal attack that doesn't cost any spirit points while you're in the air if you have this power up.
I did not know that.
It's just down B instead of up B.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, not up B. It's just instead of like the
B.
up B is for all the other ones.
Yeah.
B while you're in the air. So I didn't know that either, but it mentions it, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like they just they pour energy into certain areas and not others. You know that saying, you only use 10% of your brain. Well, sometimes it's true.
Wow, I'm actually like, while we've been recording, I've just been watching a Ninja Gaiden playthrough, and I've been on the ending cinematic for a while. Like, this is actually a pretty long and intense ending cinematic.
I told you, over 20 minutes of
It's
cutscenes
great.
in this game. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So yeah, top-notch presentation.
The presentation's all there, and I think we're both in agreement that it's a fun game, and it lays out a lot of things. Is there anything that we missed, though, Sean, when we're talking about this game? You know, I don't know, did we really do the birds justice in just how annoying they are?
Yeah, can we set aside some time to discuss the birds?
And a moment for all of our fallen ninja brethren who have fallen into countless pits due to the birds.
Let me just say that I think that if there was a species of bird, and I know that that's not a possibility because there's several kinds of birds that will attack you, and even some bats get on it. But if there was a species of bird that just angrily attacks whoever comes by, those birds would all be dead. So I think that this game is completely unrealistic and actually does a disservice to wildlife by having this kind of enemy in the game.
It's just kind of wild that, like, the hardest enemy in the game is just a normal bird, you know? because there's actually, and I'm being serious here, you know, the boss fights are a whole nother story, but there is no harder enemy than the birds. The bats are pretty slow, easy to tell. I always felt like I could kill them pretty good. The dogs, you just jump over them. The cheetahs, those are just dogs spray painted to look like cheetahs. You know, like, there's so many things in this game, like all the like the ghoul priest or the guys who throw their boomerangs, you know, really fast. As long as you know that, like, as long as you can recognize that that's the guy who throws his boomerang really fast, you'll never get tricked into getting hit by that. So all those guys have, like, nice tells. The brown bird and then the white bird.
Oh, yeah, the white bird's crazy.
Right. They just act insane. They're just like, I think there's something actually wrong with them. And they can't be in cahoots with the demon statue. You know, like, they just can't be in cahoots with those guys. So they're just pissed off birds for no reason.
Maybe, and I can kind of see this as an explanation. Maybe the presence of this eldritch abomination has driven the birds insane. I can accept that as a story reason, but I don't know why you'd want to torture your players as much as they do.
Yeah, if the final boss was some kind of Lovecraftian bird, that would have made more sense, right? I would have been like, oh my gosh, they were behind it all along. Like, birds have been on Earth so much longer than us, and we didn't know it. You know, but, like, here we are, and I gotta say, the birds, we were warned about them on the Twitter page by many of our Nostalgia listeners, and didn't take it. Yeah, and I just didn't take it seriously until, even when they first appear, it seems harmless. They're annoying, but, like, whatever. Somewhere around Act 4, the birds just, like, get loose.
Yeah, to me, I thought when I first saw one, like, in, like, alone, I thought, like, okay, this is just sort of going to be like a Medusa head, and Medusa heads are a pain in the ass, but they're predictable enough that you can just sort of navigate around them. But yeah, I wasn't prepared. I should have heeded their warnings.
So Ninja Gaiden came first to the Famicom under Legend of the Dragon Sword. Do you think that's cooler than Ninja Gaiden?
No, I prefer Ninja Gaiden.
Legend of the Dragon Sword, to me, that feels like a book. I don't think that it's a video game.
A very poorly written, paperback only book that sold in a
Scholastic.
Yeah, a Scholastic book at a book fair in elementary school, or just sold in an airport somewhere.
And you would think that would be my piece of Ninja Gaiden trivia. However, this game was developed and released around the same time as the beat 'em up arcade version of the exact same name in the States, Ninja Gaiden. Did you know that there was also an arcade game named Ninja Gaiden made by Tecmo, and that neither of the games are ports of each other, but were just parallel projects developed by different teams within Tecmo with no relation to one another?
Interesting. I wouldn't think of that at all. I feel like there's a modern, like an analogous example of that, but I can't really think of it right now.
I played the beat 'em up arcade version on MAME. I don't think I've ever even seen a cabinet of this thing in real life, but I did play it on MAME, and I gotta tell you, what an absolute dumpster fire!
Oh, is that
of
bad?
a game. Like, it is terrible, and it's just like it just ruins. Like, okay, so let me put it this way. All right, it's not awful, right? It's not like, oh my god, like I'm sure people who put the quarter in could get a quarter's worth of enjoyment out of it. However, like, compared to what the NES version has laid down, I just feel so bad for those guys who were, in Tecmo working on the arcade version, and then they see the NES version and they're like, wow, we're using better hardware. We're using, we're doing everything. Like, ours is supposed to be the moneymaker, and these guys are working on like a home console version, and it's just every bit better than ours. Like, just the idea of making it a beat 'em up too is just like, I don't even know what would make you think that a ninja
that
should
doesn't
be
seem to
involved
make
in a
sense.
beat 'em up.
Because a beat 'em up really relies on like sort of spongy enemies, where it's going to take you a moment to beat each one. Where with like a ninja game, you'd think that like this whole, like, he's got a sword and he's just going to stab the guy and then he's going to move on to the next enemy. It doesn't seem to have the same rhythm. So yeah, I agree. That's a weird. That was an odd decision for them.
Yeah. There will be 2 more NES games for Ninja Gaiden, Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3. I won't reveal the subtitles because everybody knows them except for me. So, are you excited for more Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah, I think
if they learn their lesson?
If they learn their lesson about the goddamn birds, I think I can get on board for a sequel.
All right, and then, you know how, like, for the Super Nintendo, Super Mario All-Stars was released, which was just like a remake of the 3 Super Mario Brother games on the NES?
So Super Nintendo had Ninja Gaiden?
They had Ninja Gaiden Trilogy, but I like your name better. I think that's what it should have been. Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. And, I played this one too, and I gotta say, like, they just didn't do enough to justify it. I thought I was just gonna love the idea of playing the same game, but in 16-bit with some tweaks and some, even better presentation. But it's almost like I don't know.
Like a 1-to-1 or
it is pretty close to 1-to-1, and maybe they were trying to be faithful and just say like it's now the game on Super Nintendo,
That's
but
weird.
There's just a lot of those weird quirks and programming decisions are still there, and I get it. Like maybe maybe they didn't want to do the work, but also maybe they wanted to be faithful. I don't think that's what anybody was looking for at that time, because at that rate, I'd rather just play Ninja Gaiden on my NES.
Huh.
Right? Like at this point, if you're just doing it that way, the only value is that it's 3 games in one.
Yeah, I would
value.
imagine, because like at this point there wasn't so much like I feel like there wasn't like the purism that we see now of like, oh, we don't need to make these more pretty. Like everybody wanted to experience this game in higher fidelity, I would imagine. So I really don't understand the decision there.
And Ninja Gaiden also came to the PC Engine. Again, the very same game and everything like that. However, for some reason, like everything in the game is smaller. Like the screen size is obviously the same, but like everything has just been like scaled down so that backgrounds are just so much larger. And I'm not sure why they made Ryu so small, but I couldn't get over that when I was playing this version of the game too. And I was like, it's weird because this is the PC Engine. It's supposed to be a very powerful console for 1994. And I just feel like, again, they just said, we're not changing what we've made since 1989.
Huh.
So I don't know why this keeps happening. But if you wanted more Ninja Gaiden that wasn't just the first game remade for different consoles and different ports and stuff, maybe you would check out the Ninja Gaiden OVA, which I will link to in the show notes because it's available on YouTube. It is a 30-minute anime that it takes place right after Ninja Gaiden 2. So maybe you should wait to watch this until that episode. But I looked over the animation. It gave me even more Golgo 13 vibes.
Huh. Yeah, for a second there, I thought an OVA was the name given to like fan-made remixes that like put like new metal over the top of anime footage. Is that a different thing?
I have no idea because I think that's an FMV, right?
Is that
fan-made video.
Oh, I see. Okay.
OVA, I don't really exactly know what that stands for because for some reason, like, the internet is really adamant about putting OVA on everything like that, but I can't tell the difference between an OVA and an anime.
Huh.
You know, so I don't know what makes them different. Maybe it's like a budget level, but that's the best of my guess. Obviously, we have the Xbox games. The reputation of these difficult games, held Ninja Gaiden away from a lot of people, my and Sean included.
Mm-hmm.
But they do exist, and they exist on a variety of platforms now. Like, first they were Xbox games, but now I think you can play them on even the latest, well, not the latest, but play them on, like, the PS3 and the Xbox One, I think, because of backwards compatibility. So there's 3 of those.
Did not know
they must
that.
be good.
Yeah.
And if anybody who's listening to this and is like, wow, I love Ninja Gaiden, can't believe you guys said anything bad about it, well, have I got a video game for you? It's called The Messenger, and it is a must-play. It is a must-play video game. It's called The Messenger. It's absolutely Ninja Gaiden influenced. It's available on Steam. It's available everywhere. Switch, PS4, whatever, like PS5. Probably.
You know the guy that made this game, Mike? Are you just shilling?
I don't even know the guy who made this game. I played The Messenger long before I played Ninja Gaiden, and I love the crap out of that game. And so I'd say, like, you know how we were talking about Marble Madness, and now we have Super Monkey Ball?
Yeah.
Like, this is the same kind of stretch. Okay. We had Ninja Gaiden, now we have The Messenger. Like, it does feel strange, though, right? That there's no Marble Madness sequels, and now Ninja Gaiden is also kind of dead. Where is Ninja Gaiden? Why can't Tecmo? Why didn't Tecmo make Ninja Gaiden 4 on the Super Nintendo?
Right,
Where's Ninja Gaiden 4, 5, 6, 7?
This is not anywhere near as dead as Marble Madness because of the more recent games. I think that it's due. I'm sure that there's going to be more freaking Ninja Gaiden games.
Yeah, but it disappeared for like 16-bit, 64-bit, 128-bit, if that was a thing.
No, well, I think it's due for, you know how they make with franchises now. I'm sure there'll be a new Ninja Gaiden game on the PS5 or 6.
Well, I'll tell you, the next time we'll see Ryu.
Okay.
Super Smash Brothers. I mean, what is taking so long? This guy absolutely deserves to be a character in Super Smash Brothers.
I thought they were done. Aren't they done?
I don't think they're done.
You think there's going to be more?
I think there isn't there more?
I don't know. I thought they were done after 5.
No, dude, there's a whole other pack. Come on, you know about this. Sephiroth was announced and everything.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I thought they were done after like the 5th. What's it called? Like fighter pack or whatever the fuck.
I don't know. They're not making video games. They might as well make DLC.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: Ryu, if he never goes into this version of Smash, the ultimate version, right? That's a missed opportunity. They finally got Simon in there, and it feels weird that like another one of. And keep in mind, he's a Tecmo character, so that's not even like overlap with anybody else. Like that's a good new introduction.
I think they need. I think before you give Ryu a chance, you need to give Vector Man a chance.
Or what about Pepsi Man?
Or the Cappy, or I forgot the 7-Up guy.
Oh, Cappy is from. I was thinking of from Super Mario Odyssey. That's really funny.
Sorry, the 7-Up spot.
Yeah, what they really need is a Fire Emblem character.
Oops.
All right. I think we're starting to go on tangents here, but to recap, tons of Ninja Gaiden games to play through. And we'll play through some of them. Does that sound fair?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Let's talk about if we're ever going to play this one again in a special version of the Essential Games list where we phone in Sam and Joe, who could not make it to the actual episode, but will record their votes because, I don't know about you, I think this is kind of an important episode. We should hear from everybody before we decide our final vote. So we are going to vote, they are going to vote, and then we're going to react accordingly based on everyone's vote.
We'll know.
In the Essential Games list. Sean, you only get one vote, so use it wisely. What is the vote?
So I think that while this game has a lot of my frustrations from a lot of lesser titles, and I think it's very easy to improve upon it. The presentation of this game is so well done, and I think that's more than that's more than the majority of the experience of a game like this. I think I do have to put this on the Essential Games list because a game that can frustrate me but still give me the enjoyment that I crave from a game, that's sort of rare. So my vote is for Essential.
That is one vote for the Essential Games list. And here's my controversial take on Ninja Gaiden. We have recorded 170 episodes so far. And that's a lot of games to play. And we've seen a lot of good, a lot of bad, and a lot of really bad. And after my time with Ninja Gaiden, I can pretty much confidently say this is my new favorite NES game.
That's intense.
This is the one.
Wow.
This is the one so far. This is the one that dethrones Castlevania, even though it plays the Castlevania playbook. I mean, if they ever wanted to figure out a way to improve on the formula, might as well just wait a couple of years, see what Castlevania did, and then do it again, right? Like, I really enjoyed this game here, and it's funny because I feel like I misled a lot of people with all my complaints, but I gotta be honest, when this game is good, it is really good. It is really, really good, and I really enjoyed it, and yes, there are annoying things in this game, but you can overcome anything in this game, including me. I will beat this game someday, and that's exciting. That's exciting. That, like, this is right now, like, the best game I think I played on the console, and I haven't even beaten it. So I'm going to be going back to this one a lot. I kind of knew within like an hour of playing the game that this was going to be on the Essential Games list, but as I continued to play it, I was like, man, like, it's just gotta go on. So hopefully everybody else agrees as well.
Well, let's hear them.
Hey guys, since you haven't heard from me yet, I'm going to give a nice long list of pros and cons of Ninja Gaiden as I do my Essential Game vote. So I'll start with the pros because I gotta admit I loved this game. I really had a blast playing it, and I feel like one of the biggest parts of that was because of how fast and concise the gameplay was. I feel like a lot of other games that we've played that are kind of in this genre had like maybe hitboxes didn't feel right, or something about the motion of your attack didn't feel right. And this feels it really makes you feel like a ninja. I don't know if it's something just about the motion of the slash, or just how I think part of it might have to do with how almost every enemy is a one-hit KO, so it feels like you're really good at kind of dealing with these enemies pretty quickly and efficiently. So overall, it just feels really good to play, and a lot of that also comes from that sort of parkour element of having the like wall jump ability, which also gives you that real ninja feel. And makes you kind of think about the level, and although it never gets like particularly puzzly, it makes you think about the level in a different way, like the verticality of it and how many jumps do you need to take to get between two walls to get up to where you are while avoiding the enemies and everything. There's a lot going on. Secondly, my second pro is that it's bite-sized, so I feel like you can kind of sit down in an afternoon and try and beat Ninja Gaiden, but also it's definitely challenging enough that it's going to take you some time to master. So even if you feel like you want to blow through the game, like it's not too easy. Like, that's for sure. So I think that the balance between like the length of the game and the challenge, they hit that pretty well. I will say maybe towards the end there are a couple points that I think get for me personally, or I could use a little less of a challenge, but for the most part, I think it was pretty balanced and like a good way to sort of extend the length of a pretty short game. And then finally, there's a very ambitious story, and yeah, it made me chuckle a few times at how they tried to cram like a really, really convoluted plot into this small game. But I actually do think they did a decent job of telling this story. And if I were a kid in the '80s playing this game, just knowing how I was as a kid, it would have drawn me in hook, line, and sinker. I would have eaten that up. Even though there are obviously a lot of points where the story is super rushed and plot elements seem almost to come out of nowhere sometimes. It's a little overambitious for the way that they're telling it, but I still appreciated how robust they tried to make it. So I really, I kind of respected it for that, and I actually am interested in where the story goes. I want to play the sequel now after seeing the ending. To jump into the cons real quick, this one's kind of, it didn't need this necessarily, but I think that this game is begging for a co-op mode, and I wish that there was a way that you could jump in and play co-op. Because it just feels like the perfect game to kind of almost like that Ninja Turtles vibe that we get from games that we'll see in the future of like jump in with a friend and try and beat these levels together. So I did think that that was sort of lacking. I thought this would be the perfect game for it, but you can't really fault it because it's early, so like they haven't figured it out like that's where this could go yet. Another a big thing that kind of affected my experience was, I think, turning. Just turning from left to right can be a little janky and not really feel as concise as the way I was talking about earlier, where a lot of the attacks are very concise. A lot of times, if something comes up from behind me, you need to turn way earlier than you feel like you need to turn in order to actually hit the enemy before it hits you. So like I think that a lot of times kind of hindered my experience of like making me feel like a ninja. It didn't really help to have that little like there's almost like a lag to when you turn around, which really threw a wrench in the whole like be fast and quickly dispatch your enemies thing. And finally my last con is that sometimes the enemy placement, while overall I think that they did a good job of like just it's not just completely random like we've seen in other games where like they did place things in what seemed like deliberate spots to make a good level, but a lot of times like you'll kill an enemy but it'll just keep spawning over and over again, and that felt a little like random and like you're just being mobbed, and I think that sort of takes away from how much thought they put into the placement overall. That it doesn't really matter if you take something out, you have to keep moving or else like it'll just keep spawning. Now that didn't happen all the time. There were just more than a few instances that I felt like that was a major hindrance. So those are my lists of pros and cons, and I'll say that although that there are a couple of moderate to significant cons, they do not outweigh the pros even close for me. I mean, I think that this game was fantastic. I think that it's definitely worth playing, and I'm going to give it an essential vote.
So I think that this game is possibly the most polished game that we've seen in making this podcast. It has an entire story in it with cutscenes, which I've never seen in the NES before. It's got really fun mechanics. The art is amazing, and it's maybe the most ambitious game that we've seen at all. And it's definitely one of the best executed games. And it's just hard to find anything really wrong with it, unless you just don't like this kind of game. But it's an amazing game, and it deserves a place on the Essential Games list.
And it seems that the correct destiny has come to light here.
Yeah, I guess you could say that Ninja Gaiden is an essential game.
Hooray!
I had to say it that way because when we do it like this, I don't get to say that, so now that's when it's official. I think there's a moment beforehand where, we do the votes and the listeners at home aren't necessarily counting like, okay, wait, how many yays, how many nays? So I have to say that. I have to say this is now an official essential game before it can be blessed on the list.
Yeah, I think that's actually in the charter.
Right, which anybody can get a copy of. We're happy to send those, only via mail though. So it's like a whole thing.
Yeah, who wants a PDF of something like that?
Yeah, and then you got to sign up for USPS informed delivery. It's honestly a whole thing. I don't want to get into it, but if you do need to see the charter legally, we can provide it to you.
We do hope that this is consolation for the people that wanted other games on the list. Or want other games off the list. Like, we do most of our voting to curry favor with a certain camp of people.
Well, I think that's a good point, though, Sean, right? Like, there are certain people who are probably upset that Zelda 2 is not on the Essential Games list. And some of them are on this podcast. But, I think every episode, right, is about identifying the current game in the scope of the chronological exploration. And so right now, in our history of doing the podcast, Ninja Gaiden is really solid, and I think deserves to be on the Essential Games list. Could things change in the best of 89? Probably not likely, but that's what we do here on the show, is like, we look at the games at face value, then we look at them in the context of every NES game, and then we look at them again retroactively. So I think, in a way, even though right now we only have nostalgia, by the end of the show, like by the end of the show's run, we will have nostalgia.
Oh God, that made me cry. You made me pee my pants.
I didn't mean to, but it can't be undone. There was a time in first grade where I wanted it to be undone, and the universe wouldn't let that happen.
Yeah,
so
what's done is done.
Right.
Ninja Gaiden's essential.
Ninja Gaiden's essential. We're still posting on Twitter at NostalgiaCast. We're still recording episodes every Friday. Those three things are true. But do you know what's not true?
What's not true, Mike?
What's not true is whether or not we knew the results of the Essential Games list during the recording of the episode.
I don't know if you want to tell people that.
No, it's true, Sean. They need to know. There is an alternate version of this very episode that was recorded in the weird situation that the Ninja Gaiden game as we know it was not put on the Essential Games list. And that version will be buried in a graveyard.
I thought you were going to say that it's available somewhere.
No, absolutely not. That is one version for the nostalgia collectors out there, the people who collect every single episode. Don't worry, the NFTs are coming, and you can buy the NFT versions of each of our episodes. But you will never be able to listen to the version where Ninja Gaiden was not put on the Essential Games list.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with timelines like that.
Right. Do we do that for every single game? No.
Because we're all in the same room.
Right, we're all in the same room, but this particular situation, we had to do that. Now, do I practice in the mirror what would happen if people voted no on games I want to be yes? Absolutely. I've had to prepare myself for that every single day since Metroid. Ever since the Metroid episode, I've had to prepare for the fact that my other podcasters might go against my wishes.
Which he's been trying very hard not to let us do since then.
Right. But this is a fair show. This is a democratic show, and everybody's votes are equal until I can change the charter to make them so that they're not, which is something that Sean writes, so I don't know how much power I have over that.
Yeah.
So again, if you want to read that charter, just reach out to Sean, on the handles that he usually provides to you guys.
Yeah,
it's pretty easy to get a hold of. Yeah, you remember them. But if you want to reach out to Nostalgia, you do that at NostalgiaCast on Twitter. We're posting new episodes every single Friday. We got a pretty mediocre game coming up next week. It's like World Games or something. But don't let that discourage you. Yeah, well, no, I didn't mean it like Mediocre games can show up on the essential games list. Look at some of the games on the list. But
so much salt.
That doesn't mean that that you shouldn't listen to that episode, because hopefully you join us like we look forward to you joining us. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I'm Michael Esposito. You can find me at Esposito Film on Twitter. Have a great weekend if you're listening to this on a Friday. Have a great Monday if you're listening to this on a Sunday. And it's going to be an okay Tuesday if you're listening to this on a Monday.